And then that quickly scaled from pretty much nothing to $140,000 per month in the span of 5 months. And in large part, that was due to the automation and to AI. There's no way that I would have been able to handle all those tasks myself.
Welcome to the Psychology of Achievement. In this episode, you will hear how Jono Catliff went from total business collapse twice to successfully building $1 million a year business that totally runs without him. On top of that, you're going to learn the exact mindset shifts, the hard lessons, the business principles, and automation strategies that helped him to scale fast and build his dream life without breaking him along the way. Enjoy, and let's dive in. Jono, you have achieved what many would consider absolutely impossible. You bootstrapped a business from the ground up, scaling it to over $1 million a year, and then fully automated it so that you hardly have to lift a finger and it all runs without you. And as if that wasn't impressive enough, in the last year alone, you've started a second company teaching others how to automate their businesses. You grew a YouTube channel from nothing to over 50,000 subscribers, and you're now consulting over 400 businesses per month in your paid community, giving you time and location freedom, and you've only just turned 30. It's a privilege to have you here and to learn from you. Jono, can you take me back to the early days of your first business? When was this and what was life like at the time?
First of all, Jordan, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it just feels like the beginning too. I mean, it feels like I'm just getting started and I can't wait for the future and what that holds. The beginning, wow, oh my gosh, it was a train wreck. I think that's pretty much the only word I have to say. I mean, obviously anyone starting out in business, they have high aspirations as to what may come. And then reality kicks in and kicks your ass and you learn the hard way that things are way more difficult. And so, yeah, it was the hardest year of my life. And reflecting back on it, I'm just freaking thankful that it's over. But it gave me the exact crash course in entrepreneurship that I need to succeed.
Amazing. As it tends to be, right? It's incredibly hard, but it's exactly what we need at the time. When was it?
I started actually when I graduated college, university. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just know I didn't want to get a job. And I decided that I had a very smart idea that I'd go into business for myself. And part of me doesn't know if I was just crazy or like wildly optimistic at the time.
Yeah.
And I ended up rotating DJs across nightclubs in Vancouver. So we'd go to different nightclubs, throw in DJs. They would get to perform in exchange for selling tickets. And man, I can't think of anything that was more difficult that I could have chosen and less profitable for all the work that actually had to go into it. As a disclaimer to anyone out there that wants to do that, selling $5 tickets is probably not the best way to become wealthy.
No, certainly not. But it's a place to start, right?
It is a place to start. And you know what? Like, it was only uphill from there. And for what it was, I'm very glad because it really taught me how hard sometimes you have to work for so little. And it instills that mentality into you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And at the time you said, I just knew I didn't want to work a job. And so you said, okay, well, I'm going to go and try this business. I'm going to try working for myself. First of all, what was your schooling in? And second, what made you choose nightclub DJs of all things?
Two excellent questions. First one, with the education, I took resource and environmental management. So I would say I did a 180 degree, but I don't think that does it justice because I feel like it's like even more than that, which is crazy because just completely opposite. In terms of which always makes people laugh because they're like, oh, you must have taken computer software engineering or business in school. And I was like, no, like I never even took a freaking class in business, like literally not even one in my entire studies and not even one computer science class either. It's just all self-taught. And I got into the whole nightclub scene thing because at the time in second year university, I had a roommate that was a DJ and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I had a background in playing guitar. But I was always passionate about electronic music. So I ended up learning and found out the hard way that at least in Vancouver, in order to DJ, you really just had to be an exceptional salesperson most of the time and sell tickets. And that was your kind of gateway into performing. And so we threw parties, which allowed me to pay my way through university, and then that kind of transitioned into nightclubs and bars after that.
Got it. So am I understanding correctly then that what you were doing was, so you had the DJ, you were selling the tickets to the DJ show to fill up the nightclubs, and then you were switching the DJs from nightclub to nightclub and keeping the cycle going. Did I get that
Yes.
right?
Yes. That was about, I want to say like 8 years ago. And I haven't stepped into a nightclub or bar ever since,
Right.
except for my brother's bachelor party. That was it.
Yeah. Right. The one exception.
The one exception.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you started doing that. Naturally, there were going to be some roadblocks. You said that was just like an incredibly challenging year for you. What were some of those early roadblocks that you encountered?
Well, I think that there's a lot, and it kind of, I have to jog my memory all the way back there. But I think one of the biggest things is when you have to depend on such a large team with people being with such minimal investment into the success of
Hmm.
throwing these events, it's really hard because you have to obviously inspire people to get behind a common vision and actually do it when there's very little incentive to do it long term. And so I think that's one. I think obviously pay is another, right? Because it was like such a, yeah, just such a low paying kind of field to be in. Like it just obviously, I think that was another one. But I would say, yeah, the biggest challenges were being able to inspire people to sell enough to be able to maintain, or rather retain the contracts we had with the nightclubs and bars. And then that would probably be it. And
Yeah.
then also have them actually play music that wasn't so bad that it got us kicked out of the night.
Right.
Because everyone kind of wants to play their own music, and it's not always the best music
Right.
for every single bar and nightclub.
That makes sense.
And
One of
that's
those
my
things.
political voice talking here.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of those things that I don't think I would have. No, obviously that's not my scene, so I wouldn't have thought that much about it. But I wouldn't have expected or planned for DJs to start putting on their own music and people being like, "Boo."
hundred
You
percent.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. So
got it. Okay, so you started this. You encountered the challenges, inspiring people, selling enough tickets, getting paid, not getting kicked out of the place,
mhm.
and things obviously grew from there, right? So, how did this start to transition? Where did this take you?
I had to take one step back before I could take three steps forward. So I was sitting in my chair in my house one morning and was feeling pretty good. And I get this phone call and I pick it up super enthusiastically. And I remember talking to one of the bar managers, and it was the bar manager that we worked with the most. And he calls me up. He's like, "Hey, we're going to cut this starting immediately. And unfortunately, we're not working with you anymore. Thank you. It's been great." One opened up my email immediately afterwards, saw an email come in from another bar that we worked with. They said, "Hey, we're done." And then later that week, another cancellation and then another one. And what started with like 11 or 12 contracts went down to two. And it wasn't enough to even sustain myself. I had to make a really quick decision on how I wanted to pivot moving forward. And so for me, it was probably one of the lowest actually points in my career, because I can't stress enough like how lost you feel when you're kind of backed up in that corner, nowhere to go. And it's scary stuff. I knew I didn't want to get a job still. I was still resistant to that. But I wanted to create a business, and I thought, okay, well, I don't really have many options. I don't At the time I didn't have that many skill sets. But what was the next of kin that I can logically go into? And I decided, without thinking too much about it, DJ services. And so I had DJ services for weddings and private parties. I had about maybe maybe $10,000 in my bank account. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do Google Ads. And that's quite a costly way to go about acquiring customers. And more or less what happened was week one went by, zero sales. Two went by, zero sales. Then we're going into the first month, zero sales. And then we're at the end of the second month. And I remember looking at my bank account thinking, I cannot sustain this. I have made zero sales and this just doesn't work. I'm not going to be able to afford anything. And I remember thinking, I'm going to give it 1 week. That's it. I have no more money left. And it's either going to work or it's not. And that week, I closed 10 sales for $10,000. And it was the most money up until that point in my life that I ever closed or made in my entire life. And my fortunes changed. And then that's how I got into weddings.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. I have so many questions here. The first is, you are at home, the bar manager, somebody that you've worked with the most, calls you and says, "Hey, we're cutting this." I imagine that feels like a kick in the gut, right? Like that had to have felt awful. And then to compound that with, you open your email and there's another cancellation, and then you go down from 11 contracts to 2. What was that? First of all, what happened that all of those contracts fell through? And then what was that like for you as you went through it?
I can't remember exactly why they canceled. It's just a combination. Maybe they wanted to rotate new talent in. Maybe we didn't do a good enough job. Maybe just change. Maybe they were shutting down nights. I think it was just a combination of everything. I think the hardest thing about it was when you invest so much time into something, it feels like your baby. And so when you lose that figured like metaphorical baby, it really feels like a part of you is lost. And so your whole identity gets kind of wrapped up, at least for me, because I was investing 16 hours a day, 7 days a week into something that failed. Part of my identity was wrapped up in that business. It was who I was. And so having to come to terms with that loss and reinvent myself was probably the biggest challenge.
I love that you touch on that because I don't think that's actually talked about enough. In that, in any entrepreneurial endeavor, we pour ourself, the essence of ourself, into whatever it is that we're creating. And if that fails, it can so often feel not only like we are a failure, but also we lost that part of ourselves as that disappears. And a lot of people quit at that point. A lot of people are like, you know what, I tried it. I was working so hard, it didn't work out. Guess I'll go get a job. What stopped you from quitting? Was it just that you really didn't want a job and you said, well, I'm just going to spend the rest of my money trying to figure it out? Or was there anything else to it? What kept you going?
That's a good question. I guess that I don't really have a plan B. I never really saw myself going down a defined path. So to me, there wasn't really another option. I don't know. Again, like, I don't know if that makes me sound crazy or whatnot, but like, I didn't think if I don't make this work, I'll just go do X, Y, or Z. That was never in the deck of cards to begin with.
Right.
So it's kind of like I have one path to go down and I have to make this work and I don't have another option. So no matter what happens, I'm going to be forced to make this work. And fortunately enough, it didn't get that to there. And I quite frankly, I don't know what I would have done. You know, I probably would have gotten a job, obviously, and supported myself, but like it didn't get there. But that's probably what kept me going. And for me, like, I started this call with you saying it's just the beginning. And I really feel like it is, because with that business, with the next business and everything I'm doing, it's stepping stones to having the greatest impact on humanity as possible. And so I think of it more just like minor road bumps along the journey. And I think if to me, it's like, it's just part of the experience that you have to go through to get to where you want to be.
I love that. This is exactly what this podcast is all about. Like, what's going on up here as you are navigating these things, and the perspective that we take on something influences literally everything that happens after it. And what I heard you say there is that there was no other option. There was no plan B. There was no, well, if this doesn't work, it's, I am going to make this work. And there's like a single-minded focus on having the largest impact that you can in this lifetime, combined with the clarity and purpose and vision, as well as the acceptance of the roadblocks, the friction, the bumps along the way, not seeing them as bad and wrong and should not be, but something that's integral to the process. Now, I just paraphrased in my own words, but is that correct? Or is...
I think it is, you know, like, it's only a failure if you frame it in your mind as a failure. That's really what it is. You know,
Right.
I think a lot of people, and I see this from time to time too, especially as I'm working with so many people, but I feel like there's a tendency to hit that roadblock and view it as a failure and then give up. But if you frame it that way, of course, it's a failure. But if you frame it like it's a success, it can be. And so I think a lot of failures can be great successes in the long run, because when you think about any skill you acquire, you're going to suck. Like, I don't know if I can swear or not.
Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
You're going to suck ass at the beginning when you start, guaranteed, right? And the only way to get exponentially better is just to fail faster and increase your output. And so I think that when it comes to failure, it's just the natural course of success. You have to go through that to get to where you want to be. For me, I like to think about failure as like, how can I get this out of the way as quickly as possible? And more importantly, how can I get real life feedback as quickly as possible so that I can move on and make sure that I can learn from my mistakes? And so that's one thing that I love doing, is just asking feedback so much like a broken record until people will just sit there and be like, look, man, I don't know what to tell you because you're doing everything right. And then that's when you have something great.
Yeah. Amazing. What a profoundly beneficial mindset to have, that when we start, instead of assuming that I have to be perfect the first try, that it's okay for me to be bad at the beginning and assume that I am going to suck at the beginning. And so there is a certain amount of repetitions between where I am necessarily at the beginning and where I want to be. And the faster that I fail, the closer I get, or the faster I get to that end state where I'm actually succeeding at something. And that the failure is only a failure if we deem it a failure. But really, a lot of them can be successes if we choose to see it that way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
When we go back to the Google ads, you had $5,000 to $10,000 in your bank account. Had you ever done Google ads at that point? You were just like, I don't know, this seems like a good way to advertise.
I don't think I actually ever did Facebook or Google Ads before that point. I just figured this is probably the best place to, and it turned out to, I guess, be lucky because I was right. It was one of the best places because, if you're looking for a local service-based business, where's the first place you're going to
Go to
turn to?
Google.
You're going to go to Google. At least back then, I mean, 90% plus of the search traffic was there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And so week after week, no sales, nothing's coming in, money's blowing out of your account. And then that last week, 10 sales, $10,000 enters your account. What happened to shift all of that?
I think that in that period of time, there was delayed sales. So sometimes the sales like I didn't quite know what to expect. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so some of the times the sales cycles just took longer. Sometimes I had to follow up more. Sometimes, and in certain instances, I had to tweak and optimize. And I think it was just a combination of learning quickly and the certain pending deals actually coming through in the end. Yeah, I would say it was a combination of multiple things.
That makes sense. Okay. So these sales started to close, and you say, okay, we now have this somewhat successful business, as in we put money in, money came out, let's go. What started to happen from there?
Oh, I just felt like an absolute gangster after that.
Yeah.
Looking back, I'm like this is like whatever. But at that point in time, like my back was straighter all of a sudden. I felt more confident. Woke up in the morning, like even on a cloudy day, it just seems so much more beautiful.
Yeah.
Things, my optimism shot up, and I felt like I was on top of the world. I was freaking, honestly, I felt like really, really good about myself. And then immediately afterwards, COVID hit, and the whole business went into the shitter.
No.
Yeah, like 3 months later, I literally hired my first employee. I was so freaking stoked, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden, you have like 3 months of just like it was 3 months after things really, 3 to 4 months after things really started to pick up, and it was crushing it. It just kept growing, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, sales stopped overnight. Overnight the country essentially banned events indefinitely.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, probably the most challenging thing was not just the fact that events stopped and people stopped booking, but I had one of the most generous refund policies you could possibly imagine. And then all of a sudden, all these bookings that came through then ended up canceling and refunding.
Right. Hey, real quick, I need your help to make this show grow. So if you're enjoying this episode, please hit the like button. If you have thoughts, feedback, or questions, please leave it in the comments. And lastly, if you want more of this, hit the subscribe button. All three options are entirely free. They help the algorithm push it to more people, which helps the show grow so that I can make more of this for you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your support. And now back to the show. Okay, so we're on a roller coaster ride. You're low, and then we're up, we're on top of the world, and then literally something you could not have planned for. A global pandemic comes and says no events. Yeah. And then people start refunding. Now, like, that's a huge issue for any business, right? Like, especially when you're in that early stage.
100%.
What happened? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, well, there's not much you can do. I mean, you have to play the hand you were dealt. And so I tried my best to steer people into rebooking for later times. Because bottom line is if you're getting married, if you had the intention of getting married, you're going to inevitably get married regardless. It's going to be postponed. And so a lot of people understood that and they ended up shifting their dates further back. And then obviously there's a substantial amount of people that I refunded. And I did refund every single person, actually. I just hurt a lot financially to end up doing that. But fortunately, like I was in a position to be able to do that, and so yeah, how I did that was just not spending or blowing all the money that I didn't have, and I'm very grateful I didn't do that because
Yeah.
if I did, I would have been in a really bad spot. And then I pivoted on to do marketing on Upwork because at the time I had a friend that was talking about how you could essentially, yeah, get paid decently well for doing Upwork contracts, and so I pivoted very quickly into that.
Right. And so we hear this theme again of something unexpected happens and you just pivot. There's not poor me, world is falling apart. It's we move, we pivot.
Exactly. Yeah. So I tried to pivot as quickly as I could. Probably could have made it a bit quicker, but in hindsight, I think most people would always think that way. And so yeah, I moved into Upwork, and that was very very challenging for me just because it was stressful having to move into a totally different industry overnight.
Naturally.
Remember, like my chest was like seizing up from anxiety because it was just such a change for me, and that was challenging. But I ended up crushing it on there and got some really amazing clients right away. And then from there, it got to a point where I was just getting more clients than I knew what to do with very quickly, probably in the span of like 2 to 3 months. And then I just got to pick and choose. People would come to me, they would try and hire me right away. I'd be like, okay, let's slow down here. Let's see if we're actually a good fit for each other. And then past that, I selected the ones I wanted to, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
Okay. And so this was at the time, did you plan to go back to the DJing business once COVID had fixed or had disappeared? Or did you think, well, you know what, I'll continue this marketing plan? Or well, what were you thinking?
So I didn't expect to return to the DJ thing. I just didn't. I mean, events were canceled indefinitely. There was
Mm,
no light at the end of the tunnel, so I just assumed that it's probably best to move on. So that's what I did. And one thing that really inspired me actually was the release of ChatGPT. Sorry, not ChatGPT, OpenAI. I think, yeah, maybe ChatGPT, like at like the very infancy. I was like on the wait list to get on day one or rolled out. And I remember seeing that and thinking, holy shit, this is the future. And at that time, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to drop everything and learn how to code. Not like drop everything, but like I locked myself in my house for like 3 months straight and just ended up programming and learning everything to do with programming, which in hindsight was one of the best skills I could have learned.
yeah. What about ChatGPT or LLMs, I suppose? Because it was like LLMs in its infancy, which for anyone listening, large language model, that's like what ChatGPT and the like are. What about it inspired you so significantly? Because to lock yourself to like again, that's a huge pivot, right? And you don't know if something good is going to come from it. You're just like, I'm just going to go do this. What inspired you so much about it?
I think that when you think about like most things in human, like just in general, like how do I formulate this? Let me think about this. There's a lot of revolutions in humanity, a lot of things that have changed the world. But for the majority of humanity, there wasn't many things that or skill sets you could learn that could have such a profound impact. And so one of those things is automation. Like I can automate more work than I'm capable of doing. I could get AI to do more things than I'm capable of doing, and it's like scaling from 0 to 1 rather than horizontally. You can like open up a whole new level that wasn't accessible beforehand. And so I just felt like the opportunities there were just so large that if I didn't go into that field and try to leverage that technology in some capacity, I would be losing out on one of the greatest transformations of our lifetime.
So
It moved me that much.
you just saw the start of the wave and you're like, that's it. We're surfing that one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And obviously it was a good prediction and you were very correct with it. Okay, so you started to learn to code. You're like, okay, I'm gonna shut myself in here. Now you're doing marketing stuff on the side as well, or coding on the side. You're doing them simultaneously, maybe. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I tried to develop a bunch of like miniature ChatGPT applications before it was like known, right? Because most people had no idea what it was at that point. So I was trying to like spin up like some custom web application, sell that, and all those went horribly wrong. Like I didn't end up actually making any money doing that, which was it just is what it is. I mean, some businesses you knock it out of the park, others you don't, right? And so when you think about like software, basically the thing with that is like the probability of that succeeding is substantially lower than like a service-based business, but the potential payout is substantially larger. So it's a higher risk but higher reward. And so ended up going in there, it didn't work out. And then from there, I ended up, but again, common theme here is like, even though it didn't work out, I still learned so much of the process, automation, artificial intelligence, software engineering, all of these skills that kind of made me a jack of all trades and across the spectrum. And so from there, I ended up going back into DJing.ca as the restrictions started lifting because I had a friend, Alex, that ended up reaching out to me and we ended up partnering on that business. And then from there, the second we started partnering, we just went full steam ahead. And then that quickly scaled from like pretty much nothing because of the regulations to 80 to 100 to 120 to $140,000 per month in the span of like maybe 4 or 5 months.
Right.
Like that, it grew exceptionally fast. And in large part, that was due to the automation and to AI,
Hmm.
the ability to sustain that growth. Because there's no way that I would have been able to handle all those tasks myself, or he wouldn't have been able to handle those tasks himself,
Right.
or the employees that we had wouldn't be able to do that. And so, in large part, it is because of AI and automation.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if I'm understanding correctly, AI, automation, and the work that you did learning how to code became this multiplier of effort. And so it was no longer what can one individual do, but rather it's like the effort goes in and it's multiplied beyond what any individual could do. And so that allowed you to go from zero to over 100 grand very quickly.
Mhm.
What was that explosive growth like for you? Like, because that's literally like a life changing amount. And a lot of people spend years and years, decades in business and never achieve that.
Yeah. I just, first of all, I felt on top of the world. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, to have such a sudden change in your life, it just like it's hard to express, honestly. It just I, but I will say this. I think that I felt fantastic, but I will say that goalposts move really quickly. And so when you're after a target and you achieve that target, the goalposts quickly move. And so I think with somebody like me, and I think this is a lot to do with human nature too, and it's probably just, most people would naturally feel this way, but essentially when you reach that goal, you're satisfied for a short period of time
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
So I think that the reward of unlocking some challenge is the ability to undertake the next one. And so you
Hmm.
have to climb that next mountain. And that's kind of where you realize that the whole process is more of what you fall in love with rather
Yeah.
than the end goal. And even like if you look at Olympians, if you look at people that win the lottery, if you look at people that buy fancy cars, they're pretty satisfied when they make that initial purchase or achieve that particular accomplishment. But that satiation doesn't last very long. And some of them, I think it was Alex Hermosi that was saying, Olympians are very, in many respects, very depressed actually after
Yeah.
winning the gold medal because they realize they worked their entire life to achieve one particular goal. And once that's been achieved, they feel like they don't have a life purpose anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so fascinating. I find that I'm always very interested in the fundamentals of human behavior, motivation, etc. Like, why do we do anything that we do? And I was actually just yesterday started a book called Flourish by the creator of Positive Psychology. And in the book, long story short, he talks about how as humans, we will chase accomplishment for accomplishment's sake. There's we just like to achieve and then continue to achieve and play the game of achieving.
Uh-huh.
And like as you said, we achieve and then we're not satiated for any meaningful amount of time. It's like, okay, what's next?
Of course. And so that's how I felt.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's just more about, at this point in my career, it's more just about the journey rather than the end goal.
Right. That totally makes sense. Okay, and so DJing.ca starts scaling. It's like, okay, we're growing. Were there any big roadblocks, hurdles, challenges, unexpected things that you faced, or what were some of the barriers that you encountered?
I think when you grow too quickly, it can be problematic. It can actually be very dangerous too.
Hmm.
And so growing quickly has its own pains as well. I'll give you a couple examples. Example number one is we were expanding across Canada into multiple different niches. So we were going from Vancouver to Montreal to Toronto, Ottawa, Edmonton, Calgary, and other cities. And we were simultaneously expanding into other niches from DJing to photography to videography. And there was times where we'd be selling clients where we're like, yeah, we have the best, DJs in Canada, which I truly believe we do because we're going through tens of thousands of people to find them. But a lot of the times we didn't even have the talent to support that event. And that event was in like 3 or 4 months. And you're sitting here like freaking the hell out because you're like, holy shit, like I got to find people to be able to service. And you're essentially selling before you actually have the capability of fulfilling. And so sometimes in certain areas in Ottawa, I was honestly pretty stressed out because it's like we have 16 weddings in the next 2 months and we have nobody there. And people are
Right.
asking, hey, can we, I'm following up just again, can we talk to our contractor? I just want to make sure that everything's good to go. And you have to insert like you're obviously racing against time to find people and you're having to delay these meetings and it's just kind of this fine line between being transparent and honest but like weaving around the question as well. And so
Yeah.
that's really stressful a lot of the times when you're growing that quickly too and you're hiring really quickly and money's coming in but money's also going out too, so you're trying to figure out like, okay, like obviously budget accordingly for the things that you want to pay for. And so that's something to be mindful of as well, is like sometimes you're split testing and maybe you're I don't know, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff is challenging to be present and understand completely when you're in a fast-paced environment that's growing really quickly. And so
Hmm.
mistakes can happen, you can trip, and those trips can be fatal.
Right. Right. And these high stress, high stakes environments where you're moving quickly, you're growing quickly, and this is uncharted territory for you as well.
Mhm.
It's not like you had a business background. It's not like you knew what was going to happen up ahead.
Yeah,
What do you think allowed you to navigate that where others might have failed?
makes me feel alive. I love that
Just the
feeling.
love for it?
Yeah. Yeah, I love the challenge. I love the fact that your back's up against the wall and there's no option. You just have to succeed. That's it. You don't have you don't have a plan B. There's nothing else that you can do. So you
Right.
have to figure it out. And
Right.
I think that like at a certain point in time, like as an entrepreneur, like you are the last line of defense. The buck the puck stops with you, right?
Hmm.
It's like you can't just hand it off to somebody else, and you can't just say, "Sorry, I made a mistake." Like, I mean, I guess you could, but you're not going to be
Yeah.
probably in a good spot for very long if you do that. So you just have to find the solution, and you have to find that solution very quickly. And so I love that challenge. I love being in that position. I think it is stressful for sure. And there's a healthy amount of it, which motivates you to work really hard. And then there's too much. And there is a fine line between both of those realities while doing it. But yeah, I would say I am just somebody that naturally likes to push the envelope as much as possible and grow as quickly as possible. There's two ways to start a DJ business in my mind. Number one is you can go off, become a DJ, work for another company, work there for 10 years, learn the skills, slowly manage different hats, become a manager, learn all those skills, and then start your own business. Or you could just say, fuck it, and I'm going to open up a business tomorrow. I have no skills and I'm just going to learn it all as I go. And so I naturally am the person that chooses plan B. It's not the easiest path as you can imagine, but I just like trying to, go as fast as I can.
Yeah.
Obviously delivering high quality results along the way. And we did do that. We maintain a 5-star rating across thousands of events.
Yeah. Which is an incredible accomplishment. It truly very, very impressive. Also, I really agree with the resonate with the plan B of, well, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm just going to go and send it. We'll figure it out as we go. That's how I've always done it as well. And I think, to your point, it is short term much harder that way, but I think it's very rewarding, and you learn and grow exponentially doing it.
Well, I think that, and I think this is such a big point because this kind of plays into what I'm doing now. and because I consult with hundreds and hundreds of people every single month, most of the people that come to me, especially with AI automation, they just have one motive. If you break down every layer, everything that goes into it, they want to make money. That's it. Nobody learns AI. Nobody learns automation. Nobody learns software engineering. Nobody learns sales. Nobody learns marketing because they're like, I just want to learn this stuff. It's like, no, because there's an end goal, right? And that end goal is some benefit in life, whether it's likely money, it could be status, it could be whatever. And so the reality is that most people, it's money, because otherwise you're not going to learn AI automation. It's just, why would you? And so the thing is like, that is the end goal. People come in at all different places in their journey. And one of the things that I always like expressing right away is like, and do you mind if I actually share my screen and
Yeah,
write
that'd be
this on
great. Please go ahead.
the board? Because I think that this is a lot easier if I just actually share this. Are you able to see my screen?
I am, yeah.
Okay, sweet. I just need to fire this up here and let me know. So like, I think that people come in, and this is where most people are at, and most people want to get all the way over here. And so this is the journey people are on. And kind of like what I like to define this as is you're on that nice little beach and you have waves rolling up,
Yeah.
and then you're, underneath a lawn chair where the
Mm.
sun's and, shining over top, beating
I
down.
didn't realize you went to art school, Jono. This is incredible.
Yes, this is what you learn in environmental resource management,
Yeah.
actually. And so this is you, and you're just like freaking chilling, and you're just sipping like a margarita over here.
Yeah.
And I'm really painting the picture because this is really what most people want. Maybe not that exact analogy of like the lawn chair, but that's like,
Yeah.
your ideal situation. And so let's paint the picture here. Most people will get there in this time, which I define as never. Okay. Most people will get there never. Other people take 80 years to get there. And other people take 50 years. Other people take 1 year. And other people can literally get there in like a month. And this is hard to do, but it is possible.
Right.
Or just a couple of months. And I know this because my business exploded really, really, really quickly. And so the question is like, well, why do some people get this in like 5 months? And why do some people get this in 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to one thing, which is simple but not easy. So let me write that down. It's very simple, but it's not easy. And it just comes down to priorities. And so let me expand on this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people focus their time on priorities that don't matter. So let me give you some examples. Logos, branding, website, and what else? A domain, niching down into like something oblivion. And this is supposed to say niche, but that's probably how it's writing in history. But what I like to tell people is like, what will get you here? And most people are like, well, it's money. And I was like, okay, what's that money? And they're like, maybe 10,000. Let's just go with that because that's what a lot of people want. And it's like, okay, well, what's the fastest way to get you from $0 over here to $10,000 over here? What is the number one thing? And usually it's just one thing or two things you need to do to get you to where you want to be. And for 90% of people out there, or 99% of people, it's just picking up the phone and freaking selling. So it's like, how can we cut out all the bullshit that doesn't matter, that's never going to move the needle? Screw the stuff that's just busy work that doesn't matter. This stuff does not make you money.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't. It's just the antithesis. You're just delaying the inevitable, which is sales, because there's some probably reason which is holding you back. A lot of the times, and it's different for different people, but a lot of times people just want to avoid doing the thing that they actually have to do because it sucks doing it. Nobody likes picking up the phone and doing a hard sales call.
Yeah.
So they avoid the thing that actually moves them along the path because it's the most painful thing to do. And if you want to get there, sometimes you just have to put your head down and you just have to do the hardest thing. You have to do that work that you hate doing. And that is what's going to get you to that goal. I'll give you an example. For me, in my business, I have multiple different offers, but one of the main ones is a community. So how do I get from where I want to be or where I am to where I'm going. I just film videos. And sometimes I film so much that I don't like doing it. I really don't like doing it, but I know that it's the thing I need to do, and I need to do as consistently as possible to the highest quality possible. Because if I want to get to where I am going, I just need to put my head down and put in the work and do the thing that, even though it might not be the most enjoyable in the moment, it's going to get me where I'm going.
Right. That makes so much sense. I'm really happy you brought up that board and described that. I think that those were very painful lessons for me as well, to learn that, like, I was somebody who, in my holistic wellness business, I was packed with busy work. I spent 12 hours a day doing busy work, and I was like, look how much I'm doing. And yet it felt like my wheels were spinning so fast and I wasn't actually moving anywhere. And I think that, to your point there, like, you just got to do the thing that actually moves the needle. And it's probably the thing you have been avoiding and don't want to do, but it's the thing that has to be done. It makes me think of the saying, like, swallow the frog. Like, first thing, it's just like, just do it, right? Yeah. And then you said, when you want to get where you want to go, sometimes you don't want to make the videos, but you just have to put your head down and do it anyways. Makes me think back to when I was a personal trainer. It's like, okay, you want to get jacked? Well, yeah, there's going to be days you don't want to work out. And you simply put in the reps. You do the thing that needs to be done to get the results that you want.
Of course, every day. And that's why it's simple. It's very simple. It's very simple. You know exactly what you need to do. You know exactly what it is that has to be done. It's not easy because you don't want to wake up every freaking day and do that 7 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it is that allows some people like yourself to put their head down and just do the work versus other people who claim that they want the same goal but can't seem to motivate themselves to do it?
I think that there's a difference between wanting something and a difference between actually wanting it enough to do what's required to get there. If I told you, do you want $1 million?
Yes.
You're going to say yes. But if I asked you, do you want $1 million lifestyle where you're working 16 hours a day, you're stressed all the time, you're going to bed with fires, you're waking up, you're not spending time with your family, with your friends, and you're doing all these extra things that take you away from potentially doing things you want to focus on, is that something you really want?
Right.
And for a lot of people, it's no, and that's okay. And for a lot of people, it's yes. And I just happen to it's a priority for me. And there's no right or wrong priorities in life. It's just you tend to gravitate towards the things you want. And for me, like, that's something that drives me.
Speaking of priorities, what is it that you prioritize? Like, what does Jono's priority list look like? As a general, not just in business, but like in life, in the way that you approach life itself.
Well, I think that I tend to be a bit one-sided in terms of business, and I prioritize that. And so I'm trying to do my best to prioritize all the other pillars of my life: health, career, relationships. But I would definitely say it's focused around work at this point in my life. And I'm sure that'll change as time goes on.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of the successful people that I follow online or that I've spoken to generally seem to have that almost obsessiveness over the one thing that they're focused on. And it's like they just lock onto it, and that's their focus, and that's what they work toward, and that's what they do.
What's the most likely path of getting you where you want to be? I think that if you split your attention into two directions simultaneously, you're probably not going to be in the top 1% in either.
Right.
Ultimately speaking, you likely want to move as high up the totem pole as possible. How are you ever going to get up the top if you're splitting your time 50-50 and somebody else is working twice as hard as you in that same given area?
Yeah, absolutely.
Except for Elon Musk. And then
somehow
you can run like 7 companies at the same time. But other than that, it's the only example I can think of.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so back to DJing.ca, you scaled up very quickly. You got to 7 figures. What happened that you started to transition into Automatable now and the YouTube channel? Can you talk about that transition a little bit and what inspired that?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. I think that, first of all, in weddings and just more broadly service-based industries as a whole, at least for the service that I was offering, it's very geographically tied. And so the only way you're going to scale is horizontally. And so I can keep opening up new cities, and then that's fine. But ultimately speaking, just the whole idea of going into a new country and then doing the same process, I just wanted to change at that point in time. I really wanted to change. And I knew that out of every service, and I spent a considerable amount of time thinking about the things that I wanted to offer. The only one that actually stood out to me was AI and automation because it was the only one I was actually passionate about. Everything else I just wasn't nearly as passionate about
Right.
as that field. And so I just, wanted to start seeing if I could help one person.
Hmm.
And then one person turned into 10, which turned into 10,000, 50,000, and I'm hoping it'll be a million one day as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, at the current exponential rate that you're growing, I have no doubt that you'll be there sooner rather than later.
That's the goal.
What's it feel like to know that, to say, okay, well, I helped one person and then I helped 10 people. For a lot of, let me just speak for myself. I thought that I would be very satisfied if I could spend all of my day helping people. And I was like, if I could just change one person's life, that would be incredible. And then I realized that the goalpost moves. But I'm curious, what's it feel like to know that you're helping 50,000 people? That's like a small city.
Yeah. I don't think it actually makes me feel any different, to be honest with you. I think that the way I feel is not driven by external factors. I think the way I feel is driven by internal factors,
Yeah.
whether it's 50,000, 1, or 10 billion, which even there's not even 10 billion people on the planet. But, it's at the end of the day, it's just driven from an internal state.
Got it. Very cool. Okay, and so let's dive into this leg of your journey where you started to work in AI automation, teaching people about automation, how to rather than putting words in your mouth, what specifically are you teaching people to do with it?
Well, let me back up here and say that before I even wanted to go into YouTube or teach or whatever, I always had one goal in mind. And I think that goal is probably pretty universal for any business owner. And what that is can I, if I work long, hard, and smart enough, one day eventually get to a point where I don't have to work long, hard, and smart every single day for the rest of my life. And that's kind of the general purpose of running a business. You take on risks and in hopes that one day you can get a payoff for all the effort you put in. And that effort, that desired outcome for me was creating a business that could run itself. And it was not only just an end state, but it was an obsession of mine. The end state I don't really care about. I know it sounds contradictory, but I feel like at this point in my life, I'm not working to save time. I'm working to grow. So I'm not trying to win back a lot of time just so that I can, go chill on that beach with
With the margarita, yeah.
under the, yeah, exactly. For me, it's more about how can I leverage that time to focus on more impactful things.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can I work up that ladder progressively to get to the end, like working on, I guess, what I consider more meaningful work. That's what my thought process was. If I can figure out how to first build a business that did well enough to remove myself from it, then maybe I could repeat that process over and over and over again. And that was the obsession that I had.
Mm-hmm.
There was times where I didn't necessarily know if I was going to be able to hit it, but I did, and I did remove myself, and I realized it is 100% possible to do that. And so now, after accomplishing that, I wanted to split out and do two things: create other businesses, which I have done, but also educate people on how they can do the same thing and try and be as open book as possible to really just share as much value as I possibly can. Like all the things I share, I really don't hold back. It's like, this is really what worked for me.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing else to it. It's just that. And so I ended up going into teaching people.
What I heard you say was that one of the biggest things that was fundamental to all of this was creating a business that could run itself. And it wasn't the dream of sitting on the beach, having something that you didn't have to touch, but rather this obsession of, is this possible? And if it is possible, can I use it to create an impact?
And share that with other people.
And then share that with other people. Absolutely. And so you proved that it is possible. And again, like a lot of people think that's not possible. And so you are living proof that it is. And that now you're documenting, here's how you can do it as well. Mm-hmm. And so you're open book, sharing that with other people, you're educating people, which is incredible. Like, talk about impact, right? Because as you impact one person in the day, you look at the orders of magnitude from there, right? Like very quickly, if you have 50,000 subscribers, each helps 10 people or 100 people or whatever, like very quickly, all of a sudden you're now impacting hundreds of millions, right?
Of course. Yeah. So that was the main driver of going in. And I always wanted to grow a personal brand. It was always a passion of mine. And I'm just happy that I dove into that because it's not always the easiest thing to do. It's not easy to start
Mm-hmm.
a business. It's not easy to grow a personal brand. In large part, it's internal factors that influence that decision making rather than external. What I mean by that is all the self doubts that you have,
Mm-hmm.
perception of what other people think about you that really holds you back. And
Yeah.
it's quite ironic because it's been actually one of the most liberating things I've done because I feel like I've pushed past all of those negative emotions I had about it in the
Mm-hmm.
first place. And there's nothing quite freeing as being able to not let those underlying insecurities hold you back.
Yes. I find that the path of entrepreneurship is actually one of the most incredible personal development journeys because it forces you to face those demons that you have inside. And I hear you that as you started to create this personal brand, as you put yourself out there on the internet, you have to face the self doubts and the fears of other people's perceptions. Can we dive into that more specifically? What were those self doubts like? And how did you face them that allowed you to start to overcome them?
The self doubts were um, just those inner demons sitting on your shoulder, kind of like talking about your deepest insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it's rooted in my upbringing, I guess. It really, for me, was the perception of how other people's perception of me, how they judge me.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid to make myself vulnerable, open up, share something that I was deeply passionate about, only to be rejected or only to be criticized for the work that I do and the value I provide.
Mm-hmm.
And it touches me on so many levels because, of course, it's like it's me as a person, but it's also my life work as well.
Yeah.
And so when you're really opening up at that level of vulnerability, it can be quite intimidating. So that was the most challenging thing. And there's no shortage of people that will try and tear you down to get comments all the time. Fortunately, it's like 98% positive, maybe 99% positive, but as humans, I feel like we have a natural bias or tendency to hyper focus on the
Yes.
extreme comments, and it's quite easy to be hung up on those as well. Fortunately, I feel like I'm at a point in time now where it doesn't really affect me anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
did though for quite a while. It did affect me, and they're not. It's not like it's very negative, but sometimes people, for instance, being like, "Oh, you're wrong for doing it this way," or "You're stupid for doing this," or whatever. And I'm saying in the most Canadian possible way I can.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, it's also an amazing opportunity that people present you with when they do leave negative comments because one person saying something negative can be reframed very positively as well if you respond to it well. And it can turn a lot of people that had doubts about you into loyal viewers that want to keep coming back because they can relate to you a lot more.
Can you say more about the opportunity that's created when we respond with positivity?
So if somebody commented negatively on a post of mine and I said, fuck you, man, you're a piece of shit,
Mm-hmm.
screw yourself, people would look at that and they'd be like, well, that guy's like who he is behind the scenes is not somebody I can relate to. Like that's extreme. Like I don't value we don't share the same values or beliefs. And so there's a natural tendency, I think, when you receive negative criticism to lash out and want to, first of all, defend your ego and defend yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but also correct that person. And in doing so, you will make irrational decisions that don't actually represent necessarily who you are or who you want to be. And when I say that, I mean like if I just cool down and I sit there for like 4 hours, let those emotions pass, and then I can look at it logically. I'm like, yeah, it's not a big deal. And this person probably had a valid point, and I understand what they're thinking. And to be honest, if I was in their position, maybe I'd be saying the same thing or thinking the same
Right.
thing. And then you're also thinking, well, this is great feedback because now I know that this person has said this, and maybe I can tweak my further work to avoid these things from happening in the future. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's one side of it. And then the other side of it is you can turn that into an opportunity. And so how I like to turn these into an opportunity is if somebody lashes out at you and they say something super negative and you just reply in the most polite and respectful way. For example, hey, thank you so much for your comment. really appreciate the feedback that you're giving here. I'll take it to heart and I'll make sure to implement this next time. And maybe another line on there. You'd be shocked by the amount of support that people will give you. Because I think that when people see that, at least when I see that, I see a bit of myself in those comments.
Which comments? The negative ones or the
Negative
positive?
ones. If somebody was to leave a negative comment, I could see a bit of myself, right? All throughout my childhood and my life. And, there's always going to be some instances where, you can relate to somebody, saying something
Yeah.
rude or mean to you. And so it's very easy to see that. And then I just have a deeper appreciation for somebody that can handle those situations well.
Yeah. I've been thinking as this podcast grows that I will have to face those. And on one hand, there's an initial resistance to that. And on the other hand, there's an excitement of like, oh, this is wonderful, that this will be the catalyst to growth. I want to just circle back to self-doubts and perceptions for a moment, because I think that this is something that basically every human alive on the planet struggles with and can deeply relate to. You mentioned that when we are creating a YouTube channel about something that we are passionate about, we're sharing this part of ourselves that maybe we've hidden away and we've spent so much time building care for, attachment to, and is a part of our identity. And then we're putting it out there to be judged and criticized. And it just like goes all right through all the armor that we put up and just like hits us right. And we're like, oh, that hurts. I think that a lot of the time, our own fears of judgments tend to be our judgments of ourselves that we project onto the eyes of other people. So for example, if I'm worried that people are not going to like the sound of my voice, which is something that a lot of people struggle with, then I have that judgment and I'm worried about it in other people. When the moment that one of those negative comments comes in, wow, your voice sucks, or whatever it is, right? That's the thing that just is like gasoline onto the fire that's been stoked for so long. And I hear you that if you approach that as the opportunity, and please correct me if you think otherwise, but what I'm hearing you say is that if you approach that negative comment as the opportunity for growth and healing and learning about yourself and like where your sensitive parts are, what needs to be addressed inside of yourself, you can actually use it to grow and to become stronger and more resilient to those sorts of things in the future, building confidence and competence. Would you agree with that, or do you have any thoughts on that as in general?
100%. 100%. Like you said earlier, entrepreneurship is a very challenging road, and it's a road of self-improvement. And the way I responded to criticism in the past is not the way I respond to criticism today. And that is in large part due to the repetition or the volume of criticism that I've gone through, whether it's for past businesses, whether it's for this YouTube channel. But I can tell you one thing for certain, there's no shortage of criticism out there. There's also a lot of praise too, and a substantially overwhelming amount of praise, which I'm eternally grateful for. But as humans, we tend to focus on the negativity, at least for me.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's a huge opportunity there to grow from that. I think once you've seen it enough times, you just don't care as much anymore. It's like, what are you going to tell me that I haven't already heard?
Right. I've heard it all before. Sure.
That's like you I don't know, you look this way or that, or you sound like this, or you said that's stupid, or you're wrong because you said that. And it's just like, okay, like I understand. It makes sense. I make mistakes all the time. 100%. Right. Thank you for pointing that out. And I really appreciate that, because now I can figure out from feedback what not to do next time. So it's kind of like a hidden gem or a blessing in many ways, because you move on and you don't make those mistakes again.
Yes.
And that criticism does go down over time, I think. I think it goes up because you get more exposure, but it goes down in part too because you get better at what you do.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense, right? Back to when you first start, you're going to suck. And so you're sucking and exposing yourself. And maybe that's the price that we have to pay for the success that we want. That's like the cost to entry or something.
If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
The admission is a high price to pay. And on the other end of that is freedom. I think I've never felt more free in being able to express myself the way I want to express myself.
Right.
And not letting those insecurities hold you back. I really can't express how nice that is.
Yeah. And I think that there seems to be, and I'd love your thoughts on this, there seems to be a fundamental truth to the nature of the psychological landscape. that facing your demons leads us to the liberation of the demons. As in, like, facing the dragon leads to the treasure of gold that they have hidden behind them. And the more willing that we are to face them, the more treasures that we get on the other side. And
Yeah.
you mentioned like hidden gems, like every challenge, let's say air quotes challenge that's presented to you, if you see it as a hidden gem, as an opportunity, as the silver lining, that there is gold behind this or in this, it totally changes how we perceive it, how we show up to it. And I hear that like baked into the way that you have been approaching all of the challenges that you've discussed thus far, is that mindset. Is that the case, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I think you really have to believe that is the case, because if you buckle under pressure or the first roadblock that goes your way, then the end result is going to be giving up and convincing yourself you never wanted it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Tragically, that's a path that a lot of people go down.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think just tying it back to what you had said earlier on, that challenges, setbacks, roadblocks, friction, discomfort in any form is implicit in the journey. It's part of the journey. It's not something that's wrong or should be avoided, but like is something to be enjoyed along the way.
Makes it more meaningful too. I mean, like if everything was rainbows and butterflies, then what's the value of all the rewards you get?
Yeah.
I think like for me, I just have such a deeper appreciation for finding success in what I've done. And, again, relatively speaking, because it's like goalposts are always moving here. So it's like you always want something state that's far past where you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a greater appreciation for that, because when I started, I was anything but that. I mean, I was probably making like $3 or $4 an hour if you really stacked up the amount of hours that I was working and the amount of money I was getting paid to do it. Probably like 2,000, still just enough to kind of just pay bills
Mm-hmm.
and subsist, not enough to have a comfortable lifestyle by any
Mm-hmm.
stretch of imagination. And so it was very challenging. But what's interesting is that you end up having, and I feel like this resonates with a lot of people that are starting out, you end up cultivating this mindset of having $1 million of information in your head, and it's kind of bottled up inside, and you feel like you're just at a state that's much further than where you currently are at. And in large part, that's true. A lot of the times you have to go through all of these mistakes and really gain all of these skills, and it takes a very long time until they click and they manifest in some sort of success. And I think that's also why you have the whole overnight success story, when it's like,
Right.
it's like, no, I was like I was struggling every single freaking day. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it ended up working. And yeah, I just think that like for anyone that's watching, if you don't feel like you're at where you're at right now, just hold in there, because I think one of the best things to do is just never give up. If you just don't give up and you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, you're going to succeed eventually.
Yeah.
And you have the knowledge. It just takes time for the money to catch up.
Mm-hmm. The delay between the internal state and the external world as a reflection. I've found that that's something that has been profoundly impactful for me, where for so long I just wanted to give up every single day. Like there were, I think, a year and a half when I was really first starting. Every day I wanted to quit. And I heard the successful people there like, you just don't quit. That's how you succeed. And I was like, okay, I guess, we're just eating glass for the next however long this is going to take. And the unknown duration is so challenging. It's like, I don't know when this is going to succeed. And you have to be willing to have that maybe even slightly delusional belief in yourself that you will succeed if you just don't quit.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And I think that's in large part what it takes to succeed, because you're going to hit road bumps along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make mistakes. Shit's going to get really fucking tough.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to do about that is the real question. That those low points are what define you as like, I don't want to necessarily say as a person, but those low points in business will define your business trajectory for sure.
As in how you respond to those low points?
Exactly. Will you let them overwhelm you and stop you from doing what you care about, or will you just treat them for what they are?
Yeah.
Acknowledge it and move on and get better every single time.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to your journey here.
Yeah. Got a bit sidelined there, hey?
No, I love it. This is what we're here to talk about. And
Yeah, for sure.
in your journey where you're at, so you made the shift to automatable. You are helping literally hundreds of people now with automations. You are growing this YouTube channel very rapid. I swear every time I check your YouTube channel, you've got like thousands more subscribers, and it's like I blinked and it's crazy.
I think it'll go a lot faster now too.
Right? The compounding growth, right?
Yeah.
What what do you have your eyes set on?
For me, I almost look at it like a game where I just want to see how far I can take it.
Hmm.
The first goal was being able to make enough money to be able to just barely make it. If I could make my $2,000 a month, I'm good. The second goal is, can I actually turn this into something I can make a lot of money doing?
Mm-hmm.
The next goal was, can I automate everything and replace myself? And then after that, I think one of the next levels is you just keep growing and expanding. But ultimately, in terms of I think baseline needs, they're all met,
Mm-hmm.
every single one of them. And so the question becomes, why continue going?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I just love the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I just want to see how far I can push it, where I can take it, what I can do with my life, how many people I can have a positive impact on.
Yeah, that makes me think of the saying, "The man who loves walking will always walk further than the man with a destination."
And it also, I think that if your internal state is such that you are doing it for some given outcome, like a certain amount of money or whatever, you will either stop when you get there or you'll give up along the way because the outcome is not your desire for the outcome is less than your resistance to go through the pain.
I've been thinking a lot about the internal state first and then external state as a byproduct, and there's a delay between the two. But you touched on doing things from that state of desire. And I think that one of the things I've been contemplating is the what I perceive to be a very real difference between doing things from a state of fear and desire, which is a place of I'm scared, I'm lacking, I don't have, I can't do, etc., versus doing the same thing, going toward the same goal from a place of love, joy, vision, excitement, etc. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love how Alex Hermosi phrased it. Might miss a couple. I might miss one of these three, but there's three main drivers that push hyper ultra successful people. It's a deep insecurity about themselves, thinking they're never good enough. And then it's the fact that boy, I'm getting one.
That's okay.
The second is never thinking they're good enough, or maybe that's in the same point, and having a large work ethic, willing to just put in the work and put their head down.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I can't remember the third one. So I think that there's a lot to do with some deep-seated or deep-rooted insecurity driving us all to accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves. But I also think that somewhere along the line, you have to love the direction you're going in. I think even if you have that deep-seated insecurity, if you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, and you're also not in love with the process, I think your priorities in life will shift. And so I think that concoction of those three variables is the perfect storm to create hyper successful people given the right path. But I think that leading, just growing through pain is short lived if there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Forget the book I was reading, but there was a study where it's okay, when bosses come in and they lead from a point of negativity versus positivity, what ends up leading to better results?
Yeah.
Negativity leads to better results in all cases in the short term, and then long term positivity always thrives. And so I think that's kind of my thoughts on it. Maybe I'm just regurgitating knowledge that I've accumulated elsewhere, but I think that in large part, yes, you can be motivated by fear and negativity, but that's only going to get you so far. And unless you have passion or love for I guess where you're going, you're not going to go the extra mile. You'll go enough to get what you want, but you're not going to push the envelope.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that light at the end of the tunnel, I think that that's such an important point. And I looked up what Hormozy said here. One was the massive insecurity. The other one was they deserve something great, that they are deserving of it.
Yes.
And then the third was impulse control, they can delay gratification.
Yeah.
And I see that the deserving more is that,
Yeah.
sorry?
I got 1 out of 3. I'm kidding
Hey,
enough.
you know what? That's pretty good.
And I don't think I could have butchered that any more than I did. That's so funny. Like live fact checking as we go along.
Yeah.
There's
I mean, like, but that's coming back to something else that I notice. I've got this whole page of just the things I'm writing down that I'm paying attention to as we're talking.
yeah.
Is one of the things I'm noticing, Jono, in your psychology is this willingness to shoot the shot without like all of the inhibitions that most people allow to slow them down. As in, like, each time you pivoted, each time you go for something, like I get the sense that you show up and you're just like, I'm gonna shoot, and we'll see what happens, you know. And there are times where we miss, like for example, when you were selling DJ tickets, maybe that wasn't the thing, right? But you start and you shoot and you see what happens and you learn from it. And yeah, I think that I don't know. This just seems like another example to me of that, and I just wanted to acknowledge that I really respect that. I think that that's such a wonderful trait.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that there's something out there that most people could fall in love with if they
Hmm.
if they broaden their horizons enough. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say that like in a constricting way that like when I was starting, it's like I wanted to find something that I loved, but it's like how the hell am I supposed to know what I love?
Yeah.
I've had like 3 job experiences.
Right.
It's not going to prepare me for what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's like I can go on Google and fucking search up like top 500 service-based businesses, but at some point in time, it just becomes the answer I'm seeking becomes more distant with paralysis by analysis.
Hmm.
And so, I do feel very grateful and fortunate and lucky that I was able to stumble across a passion of mine so early on, because I feel like a lot of people that get into entrepreneurship don't realize their passion for it until later in life.
Hmm. On that note, because so many people get stuck in not doing what they love or not knowing what they love, is there any advice you'd give to younger Jono about how to go about finding it? Is it simply shooting your shot over and over again until you stumble upon something, or what do you think?
Yeah, one thing that really stuck with me was what actually Gary Vee said. It's like I just love his energy and the vibe he gives off, and it's just like, and I'm not going to sound as passionate as how he says it in his videos. Maybe in like 10 years, I'll have that like stage presence online, and I'll just like be able to fucking maneuver around the camera and say the right things like he does from like the perfect. Everything's just
Yeah,
like it's
always.
like it's like so perfect, but it's so unperfect at the same time. It's just like a camera, but it's like, bro, like, did you like practice that for like
Yeah.
say the right things every time? But I love what he said when he was like, look, if you're 20, if you're 30, if you're 40, just fucking take your shot, go do it, go fail. This is the perfect time to take that shot and do the thing you actually love, because worst case scenario, you go and get a job.
Hmm.
That is the worst. You
Yeah.
go move in with your parents, you go move in with a friend for a month, you get a job, and you're back on your feet again. And it's
Hmm.
like, if that is rock bottom, and then it might be a good opportunity to just go explore your passion and see
Hmm.
what you actually want to do.
Yeah,
That's Yeah.
that totally makes sense. Okay, so moving forward, you're helping as many people as you can. You're having the biggest impact that you can, the biggest positive impact that you can. That's going to be largely through YouTube, through the community. Is that right?
And then I'll be expanding into other social media platforms as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. So I just think it's about time. I've been focusing on one, and I'd love to migrate into others as well. Just it's the natural progression of things, I think.
Yeah, got it. Is that something at this time that you want to plug, or do you want to save that for the future?
No, I'm not a huge fan of like hard launches. It's just I'm just gonna get my stuff up,
Yeah,
and I'm just gonna be consistent and do it every day. And that's
yeah,
it.
that sounds
Right.
great.
It's nothing flashy, nothing crazy. It's not timing the launch. It's just time in the
Yeah,
space.
yeah, that totally makes sense. Before we start to wrap up here, Jono, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would want to share with somebody who's starting out on their journey, entrepreneurship, business, AI, automation? Is there anything you'd want to share with them that you wish you had shared with you?
Let me think about this for a second. I think that like the immediate thing, there's so many things I could say. But the thing I will say is that oftentimes success is just around the corner. And so many times where I have wanted to give up and thought, screw it, this is the last time. I'm throwing in the towel after this. And if I did that, my life would be completely different. It would have been a huge disservice and a huge tragedy to myself and my trajectory if I gave up. And I'm just so grateful and fortunate that I didn't, because sometimes all you need is that one last push. And I think there's a fine balance between knowing when to give up and knowing when not to. But yeah, I think that really just sometimes the game is just about who ends up holding on for the longest.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like that in large part, that's just really it. As
Hmm.
long as you hold on longer than everyone else and within reason, of course, and you also take those losses and you learn from them and you progressively get better, you should be setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. Simple but not easy.
Very, very simple, very not easy.
Yeah. Amazing. And Jono, where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you?
On YouTube, if they want to view my content, they can they can view me on YouTube. I'll be launching on other platforms as well very soon. And yeah, for anyone watching, thank you for being here with us.
Hey, that's my line. For anyone watching, yeah, Jono, thank you for being here. Honestly, such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.